Got the attention.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is a City of Hardyville City Council workshop, 205 Main Street, Hardyville, South Carolina, 29927, Thursday, January 9th, 2025 at 3 p.m. This is a workshop. The rules of order are relaxed as our clothing is. Just to remind everybody, just speak when you want to. You don't have to be recognized by the chair. Just give the courtesy of the previous speaker that they complete their thoughts before you chime in. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gruber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First on our agenda today, we have asked the development team associated with the Riverport development and Exit 3 to come down and give a presentation. By way of just a little bit of background for council and the public, the city, in partnership with Jasper County and the state, has been looking at Exit 3 for well over a decade, going back
15 years?
That's it, yeah, going back a long time. And so previous development agreements have already been approved for this area and called for the installation of a new exit on I-95 at Exit 3. But given that over the last several years, how construction costs escalated so significantly, there was truly a question about whether or not there was going to be enough funding to move forward with this project. As you know, back in November, the city, the county, and the development team was successful in going to the state and in asking for more funding to help close that gap. And we were successful in obtaining that. So what's going to be coming before you next week at your council meeting is several items that are related to this development. And really what they are updates to existing documents that the city's already agreed to, but are looking at now the new financing terms that are going to go along with the increased grant funding that the state's provided and some more beneficial loan terms for a loan that the city and the county are going to be taking on associated with this project. So in anticipation of you being asked to approve those updated financing documents, in talking with the mayor, I thought it would be a good opportunity to not only refresh the public's recollection about what this development plan calls for, but also create an opportunity to understand what the vision is from this development group, get excited about what's going to be coming to this community, and then also understand from a very general standpoint what the timing of that looks like so that we can understand the interplay between what's going to be developed in these areas and what revenues are going to be generated to help pay for those debt obligations that we're going to be taking on associated with Exit 3. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to celebrate the development that's going to be coming here as a part of this project, answer any questions that you may have about that, either from a concept standpoint or a timing standpoint, but understanding that this is still very high level. It's conceptual plans, not adopted plans. It's conceptual timelines, not actual timelines. But really just wanted to do an opportunity to revisit that information, to refresh your recollection and the public's. So with that introduction, I'd like to turn it over to the development team. Yes, sir.
Josh, there's a lot of people from the development team that we've been working with for, well, the 8.5 years I've been mayor. So the faces are more familiar than some of my family. So, and I think they are family after all this time. So I'd like each of them to stand up, identify themselves, and introduce themselves. Some of them you've seen at other meetings, but I think it's important that everybody knows the team that's been working on this for literally 15 years. So let's start with Mr. Gramling, please.
Ian Gramling Brothers, and with the development team. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Michelle?
I'm Michael Harper, with the development team as well, Gramling Brothers.
Lawyers, I'm Alan Lipson, the Maynard Nixon, representing the development team from Columbia. Thanks.
I'm Felipe Toledo, representing Thomas and Hatton. Lamar said he missed you all too. She would be here.
Gentlemen first. I'm George Bullwinkle, representing the development team of Maynard Nixon. And I'm Doug Smith, and I have been on this project for 6 years, so I know y'all are trying to see my face. I'm just 6, yeah, I came when the SIB banged us out and said no more, and fortunately, we were able to get it back in, with your help.
These gentlemen have, been working on this, I don't know how many meetings, they have, I haven't been to, and I know I've been to a lot of them. I think they meet just about every week. And of course, Grambling is going to, be developing the property. We have our attorneys, Mr. Bullwinkle and Josh go back a little bit in former employment. So it's really been a team effort. So I thought it was important that the council, you know, meets the faces. And now, could we also introduce the people on Zoom? Who's on there? Probably muted.
Our bond council.
I know Sam Howell's there, he's on council. Who's JB? Oh, that's Jessica. Okay, we know Jessica. Oh, and then, so OC's not with us?
Yes.
OC is watching. OC Vest is with, Stratford Land. And is Rob with us? He may be watching. Rob, you know?
He's watching, Mr. Mayor. He just texted me.
He's watching. Hi, Rob. He's also with the Stratford Group, and he is the manager of the project for the land holders. So that's the team. I don't think did I miss anybody? Okay. So now, Josh, back to you.
Thank you. All right, so we wanted again to celebrate what's gonna be coming forward before you next week by teeing up and reviewing kind of what the conceptual development plans are. And so I'm not sure if there's anybody from the development team that wants to help go over that, or?
Yeah.
Okay, please, we'll turn it over to you
All right,
and let you
thanks.
kind of lead a review.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you again for the time. I'm Michael Harper. I'm with Grambling and also with the development team. And I also drew the short straw, so I'll be walking you through kind of the development plan as we currently see it, and giving you kind of an update on where things are. It's a very exciting time for us. Obviously talking about the number of years that have gone into the planning on this project to kind of be where we are. And I'll give a quick summary of kind of where we are and how we see next steps happening. But I would say, you know, please, by all means, stop me with any questions you have, or if you want to focus on anything as I walk through this, I'm happy to try to explain more. So as we all know, this is the Riverport project. We're looking at Riverport North here. I don't know.
We can scroll down.
Yeah, I don't know if we can kind of zoom out.
Yes.
Well, maybe, yeah.
There we go.
There you go.
There we go. Let's focus there.
So you see in the middle there is the entrance into Riverport, right?
Right. I can kind of summarize here, I guess. So we're looking here at 17. Obviously, if you could scroll down just a little. This is kind of the heart of the project here. This is what, you know, is the proposed new exit 3 on I-95. Oh, yeah. Is that a pointer?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. So there you go. So the new exit 3 here, which as I'm guessing most folks know, has now been approved, fully funded by the State Infrastructure Bank, working through all entitlements. in the last, we feel like kind of on the 1 yard line of getting our 404 wetlands permit, which we're kind of expecting in January, which is kind of the last step for us. As everybody knows, SCDOT is planning on widening I-95 from the river all the way to mile marker 12, and as part of that, there'll be significant work on 3 interchanges. Obviously, new construction on 3, renovations made to 5, and then a replacement of exit 8. So we're excited to finally kind of be officially a part of that project with SCDOT. Bids, the package has been submitted now and is now undergoing bids for the widening and for the new interchange work. SCDOT is planning on having those bids submitted by February 8th, 10th, 12th. February 12th is when they're expecting bids back for the entire job. I think DOT has got an eye towards starting construction shortly thereafter, let's say March. So obviously that work is going to begin here into first quarter, beginning of second quarter of this year. So I think we're finally at a reality here of seeing dirt moving. So for us, obviously exit 3 is a big part of our entire project. We're looking at about a 3.5 year build, I think, for the SCDOT project. Not quite sure where exit 3 falls in that timeline as far as the overall work. But they are starting at the river with 2 new bridges at the river. So again, we're just kind of still figuring out, I guess, when we kind of come into that process. 2 other kind of key components, I think, of the overall project. Number 1 would be the completion of Riverport Parkway South, which is basically picking up here where it's stubbed out off of 17 and completing Parkway South up to the new exit 3 interchange. And number 2, the building of Riverport Parkway North, which will again pick up here at exit 3 and continue all the way up to Church Road. 2 lanes for Parkway North until you get to the CSX line, where a new flyover will be built over the CSX line, and it will widen to 4 lanes. So 4 lanes construction from about right here to exit 3, and the entirety of Parkway South will be a 4-lane construction. This is about 3.5 miles of construction. This is about 1.7 miles. And I've got a bunch of guys sitting here in the back that can weigh in if they need to, if I miss anything. 2 things that are happening, I think, in advance of all the Spine Road construction and exit 3 construction. We've got a pretty significant industrial development that's planned for what we call phase 3. It's about 4 million square feet. We call it Riverport Commerce Park. It has already, as y'all know, made its way through the IMP process. So we're eyeing a start to the 4 million square feet phase 3 project sometime in 2025. Already have pretty significant interest in that portion of the project. So we're excited about getting that started. And then we're also looking, if you can scroll down a little bit, we're also looking at some residential development in Riverport North, with an eye of starting that in 2025 as well. And I think for those 2 portions of the project, you know, what we see is obviously the Church Road connection on down to 17 is a big part, we feel like, of getting a head start in Riverport North. And then as Parkway South gets completed, that will enable us to get started on the phase 3 development using Highway 17 while the rest of the Spine Road and exit 3 gets built. So those are 2 pieces, and we kind of refer to the project as the TIF district, which is basically the 15 or so 100 total acres. If you could go down just a little bit for me. The TIF mid district, which a little bit, there you go. Oh. I can do it from there.
I think you're hitting a button other than the pointer.
Am I doing that?
Yeah.
Oh, I just thought I had the pointer right now.
The green one's the pointer.
Yeah, he's not
and then
controlling
when
this
you're scrolling,
media
you're
if he
scrolling.
It won't let me stop in the middle, huh?
Okay, stop there, there you go.
There you go.
Oh, got it. Okay.
There it is.
So the TIF district, basically encompasses this piece here, everything here, and then all of this area down to here. That is what we call the TIF mid district. which obviously will be created as part of the final documents that are making their way through the city now. And will be a means of repayment through that TIF mid district of the loan that we are signing with the State Infrastructure Bank as part of the overall SIB package to get Exit 3 funded. The non-TIF district includes everything kind of north up here in Riverport North, and then this Phase 3 project here. We call those kind of the non-TIF district. So the idea would be we get started on those two non-TIF district portions while the Spine Road and Exit 3 get built. Those can get started a little bit earlier, and then obviously as the infrastructure gets put in place, the TIF district starts getting built out. All right, let me go to the next slide here. Any questions about the overall Riverport layout? I think we've all seen it many times.
Just one question, if you can go up to your northern part there.
Okay?
That borders Church Road, or will it have access to Church Road?
We do. We've got two access points to Church Road now.
Okay, just because the question is, and I've heard from some of the folks up on Church Road, when you start developing that unit there, there's gonna be substantial land clearing and those issues there. Please be very respectful to the residents along Church Road. They're citizens too, and this is a big jump for them to have this much coming on their road. There's children and everything else along there, so
Yes, sir.
just be mindful of it, please.
Understood. And I think we all, we know it's going to take a pretty significant amount of time to get the infrastructure and the site work done there. So, the idea is obviously before you see any real significant residential development, you're going to be seeing the Spine Road and Exit 3 coming online in 3 years. So, but we understand.
Thank you.
Got it.
I think before you move on, just, we've passed the initial master plan for the Phase 3 last month, I think it was. And so that's been master planned and approved by council. The TIF district is important for what we're talking about today and what will be asked to pass. The IGA, which we had passed before we got to 35 million, it was also at that time, was a 15-year loan, paid off by that 1,600 acres that inclusive of the TIF. Now, the new IGA will include not only the additional 35 million, and that's a grant, there's no more loan, but the loan, what we asked for, also because of the cost, instead of a 15-year loan, it's a 25-year.
Yes.
So that goes into the new IGA. There were also some stipulations that the bank wanted. For instance, we have to continue to apply for grants from other sources. If we get it, we goes to the additional 35 million. I asked the board if they would put it towards the loan. Doug had me prepped, but they turned that down. They wouldn't reduce the loan. So that's what's really our concern is that TIF district, because that's what's going to pay back the loan. So there's 5 years after we start pulling the loan.
So I think that's important to talk about the
Right.
sequencing of it.
So what happens is we have $28 million grant. That will be spent first. Then it goes to the loan. They wanted the additional grant last. So, another ask that got turned down. But the second thing is the loan. So we don't start the loan, and the TIF is later. So we got to spend 28 million first, and then we start pulling down the loan. And then the loan has, and finance guys can correct me if I'm wrong. We have the first 5 years of the loan are interest only, right? And then after that, it's a yearly payoff of interest plus principal. Do I have that right? So what we're talking about, what we're going to be asked to pass next week is the revised IGA that has the additional 35 million, the additional time for the loan, and the conditions that the bank put on us.
Correct. And that's really the long and short of what's changing from what was previously adopted to what you're going to adopt now. So we'll update the dates, we'll update the dollar values, but substantively, not a lot's changing other than incorporating the additional conditions that SIB put on the additional 35 million.
Put them on the additional 35 million.
That's it.
And the only thing I'd add to that, Mr. Mayor, is I think, Alan, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the local match actually goes in first, correct? In other words, sponsored
I think does go in.
simultaneously?
Yeah, the local match, just for council a reminder, the local match was estimated at $28 million to match the $28 million grant.
Yep.
And that's the building of Parkway South. So that's all on the developer. And also the land that Exit 3 is taken up, that was also given by the landowner. So that was all estimated at $28 million to match the $28 million grant. So that's what he said when he said the match. That's the building of the road.
Parkway-
I have that part right?
Parkway South, that's correct. Yeah,
That-
significantly gone up. The development team will be constructing and funding all of Parkway South.
And, you know, the value when Dave's done, it'll be more than 20 million. A lot more.
You have questions on that? All right, well, I'm not qualified to work this thing, but.
That much is obvious.
Am I doing that?
Nope, I'm doing it.
Okay. Thank you for taking the wheel. Can you get that chart up, please? I do want to.
There we go, we're getting there.
Why, he city manager.
Zoom back in, there's a little bit of a lag.
There we go.
There we go, all right.
I'm gonna walk you through the kind of the conceptual master site plan and development plan that we have for you today and that some of us have seen. But before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about what we are showing from a use and density standpoint versus what some of our analysts have put together in regard to the regional demand as they see it. And I think this is a pretty interesting slide because here you see the regional demand for all the different uses that are included within Riverport. You've got general commercial, flex space, hotel, residential, single-family residential, and multifamily residential, and then RV spaces. They didn't include RV spaces. It's a little harder to quantify. But the way that regional demand is defined is basically the demand for anything within a 50-mile radius of Exit 3. So what you're looking at here from what the regional demand is what the demand for a 50-mile radius from Exit 3 would be looking at for the life cycle of the project. So a 25-year project. You can see almost 12 million square feet of general commercial, 2.37 million square feet of flex, 7,500 hotel rooms, 35,000 residential units, 14,500 multifamily units. And over here on the right, we're just calling out what our current plan shows is in regard to the uses at Riverport. So we're proposing 355.
One column to the left.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep, there you go.
Felipe, we lit up the wrong column. This is, rather take a look at this, 1.5 million square feet of general commercial as opposed to 11.8 for the regional demand, 877,000 square feet of flex, 652 rooms of hotel, 301 units of residential SFR, and 1,300 units of multifamily. So all of those are in line with about 10 to 15% of the overall regional demand. So we don't feel like we're too aggressive in what we're proposing with the planned overall target for Riverport based on this plan. So,
Michael, before you move, this plan, is that for the entire 5,000 acres?
no,
Or
sir,
it
this
just
is
for the
just
TIF?
TIF.
So this is just
The tip
the
area.
1,600 acres of the TIF?
I like the fact, estimates are $2022 and $19.
A long time.
Yeah, it's, I'm sure those numbers have increased.
So you're gonna see some, you're gonna see some bigger pieces of the project here. But I think it's important just to keep in mind that we're really just talking about a very small percentage of the overall demand that we see, that professionals see coming for this particular region. So, thank you, Josh. Before we get into this, could we go back, not to the, I wanted to show, I mean, maybe we don't have that, do we not?
That's the top of the document.
Okay, well, that'll work, if you could just put me back on exit 3 on this, I think, and maybe just zoom out just a little bit. One more would be good, and you can go back out. So I want to just familiarize you with the different pieces of the TIF mid district, just so you know where we're coming from. Again, exit 3 here in our spine road. Maybe down just a little bit, Josh, if you can. I'll start at the top, the other way. Yeah, perfect. So this is the northernmost piece of the TIF mid-district. The nomenclature is a little off because we've been using some numbers here from long ago, but we refer to this as parcel 1A. This is parcel 4. This is parcel 5, 6. Down a little bit, John. 7 is this long skinny piece that runs along Parkway South. 8, and then 9 and 10. So one thing I think is pretty key to understanding, again, going back to what the mayor was speaking about earlier, the infrastructure is going to be a big piece of how this entire overall development gets taken down. And so we are expecting our land disturbance permit for Riverport Parkway South in February. So we will have basically fully permitted Riverport Parkway South in the next, call it 60 days. Obviously, you're going to see the exit 3 construction starting sometime shortly thereafter. Our goal is to get started on Parkway South as soon as we possibly can when that permit gets in place. What it'll do is, obviously, as this road gets built up to exit 3, it will open up these pieces of the TIF district to enable us to kind of get a head start on repayment of the loan. Simultaneously, our goal is to, if you could go down just a little bit, Josh, is to finish completion of the connector road that you see here, which is Prosper Parkway. I'm not sure you call it Prosper Parkway. Completion of Prosper Parkway to what will end up being Riverport Parkway North, which will open up this particular piece of the development as well, getting that road in place. So that's two, I think, important pieces to the sequence of the project. Number 1 is Parkway South getting built. Number 2 is the Prosper Parkway extension to Riverport Parkway North. When those pieces get opened up, then we essentially don't have to wait for exit 3 and for the completion of Parkway North to happen, for development to happen. So we get what we feel like is a head start on the project.
Michael, I just want to point out to council, Prosper Parkway is what the extension road that will go to the Hardyville Commerce Park, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
So Hardyville Commerce Park will have access through there to exit 3. That takes away some of the pressure off of exit 5, which is, as we all know, is, a disaster now. So that's an important road as we get along in the process.
Very important.
Very important. And obviously, until 3 gets built, we look at it as this will be opened, obviously, because exit 5 can be used just for that short period of time until exit 3 is online. So, and obviously, development that occurs along Parkway South can use 17 until exit 3 is built as well. Okay, got it.
You wanna go down to the third page?
Yeah, I think I may, well, we could start here.
Waiting for this to clear up. There it goes.
Down just a touch if you can. Perfect. So, again, Prosper Parkway. We call this parcel 4A again, or excuse me, parcel 4. Pay no attention to the nomenclature, but with the completion of Prosper Parkway, we envision development occurring right here next to Riverport Parkway North. But we can make a head start on that because of the Prosper Parkway completion. What we show here is a medical office complex. And we've done some homework. We are already kind of in some active conversations with some larger hospital and medical office groups. They are very excited about the possibility of what we're showing here. And I've got the numbers. Josh, if you can, I think the chart is, maybe just, here it is here. So you've got me on the overall, that was, if you can zoom out just a little bit, Josh. This is the overall site plan. Yeah. Here you go. What I was looking for earlier. Sorry, there's a lot going on, so.
There we go. All right,
There we go.
there we go.
There we go. Okay, so again, parcel 4 here, completion of Prosper Parkway, active conversations with some medical office groups there. We see that as kind of our medical core. Pretty significant amount of general commercial with a heavy focus on medical office in that particular portion. Riverport Parkway South, and I'll get to more individual slides here, but a big piece of that here is a 600-unit RV park along Riverport Parkway South, and then significant commercial and multifamily development that moves along Parkway South as that road gets built. All right.
Which way do you want to go?
I'd like to go down if I can to.
I know I don't want you to double drive, but I'll see if I.
You should have got here early. Does that work? Oh, yeah, there you go. Perfect. I'm gonna give you a little closer look at parcel 4 again. Here you're looking at a 90,000 square foot, 3-story rehab facility, a 90,000 square foot hospital, and then all the kind of accompanying medical office uses that would go with those particular uses. So pretty excited about this part of the project. Feel like there's a real chance here. So it would be, I think, a great kickoff to the project to have this going in the earlier stages of the project.
Michael, this may be getting a little bit too far into the weeds, but when you talk about medical campus, do we have any details yet about, are we talking emergency room facilities, urgent care, primary care, anything like that, or just it's still to be determined?
I think it's early
Okay.
to say. But I would envision that potentially being on the table. So again, parcel 4's coming early, and then this is a small piece here. This is parcel 5, which is just this portion, right? It's right here. It's parcel 5. So parcel 4 and parcel 5 both coming online early. Then I'm going to make my way down to
Michael, while you're finding it, are the medical facilities taxable facilities that can go towards repayment of the loan?
yes, sir.
Well, you got places like Beaufort Memorial, they're a state entity, and so they're tax exempt, so it depends.
Parcel 10, this is the RV park that I was talking about earlier. Obviously, you've got Parkway South that's making its way up here. This is the first piece that we would hit with the build-out of Riverport Parkway South after we finish the 4 million square feet of industrial in Riverport Commerce Park. So again, another kind of active conversation that we're having now with a potential RV development there, 600 units on Riverport Parkway South. And I'm going to show you also, this is 6, if I can get to that. Again, completion of Parkway South, exit 3, and this here is significant multifamily and general commercial. So I think the timeline on what you'd see here is, again, we're call it 3.5 years out from exit 3. Riverport Parkway South is an 18-month build starting in the spring. These developments here, multifamily and general commercial, we would kind of envision those being built upon the completion of Parkway South to where they'd be open in line with the completion of exit 3 and the opening of that interchange. And so this is all kind of right up on the new exit 3 interchange. And then lastly would be these two pieces here, which is what we call parcel 6 and parcel 8. Parcel 6 is heavy on multifamily, about 1,300 units of multifamily and about 1 million square feet of flex. These pieces here, 6 and 8, are the last two pieces we feel like of the overall development. You're going to have Parkway South built. We feel like it's key to have exit 3 in those. So 6 is going to come online, and then lastly 8. And I'm going to show you a close-up of 8 because I know there've been some questions about 8. Parkway South, exit 3. This is parcel 8. Currently, we show 3 different hotels. 1, 2, 3. Now, I want to bring one thing to your attention. We currently show 2 out of 3 of those hotels as what we call large monster type hotels, 16 stories, 400 units each. When we were kind of drawing this conceptual plan up, you know, we all had the idea that this piece of Riverport, which we call parcel 8, was going to be the last piece of the puzzle. And we're obviously talking about a 25-year loan here. So I think what I'd just like to say, and you've got a 1 million square foot convention center that's a part of the overall parcel 8 build out as well. We look at this kind of as a showing to council of, you know, once we have gotten all the infrastructure in place, once Riverport has become a more mature project, our goal is to, you know, obviously to work hand in hand with council. And we want to really kind of shoot for the stars here. So we don't have any bones about saying that there is a 1 million square foot convention center and 2 400 key hotels that are ready to break ground here. But we did want to show something very aspirational about what we think the project can deliver. And so in our minds, when we are running kind of the repayment of the loan and all the assumptions that we have in regard to paying the loan off, we don't use these huge numbers that you see for these big portions of the project. We are showing 600, as I showed you in that first slide, 600 hotel keys across all of Riverport. So even though we kind of have these big placeholders down on the master site plan, we don't use those to show how we intend to repay the loan over 25 years. We show much more conservative numbers. That being said, we do feel like this is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime project for Hardyville. And so I think we want to just put something out there that you know, gets folks thinking. It's on the table. And so what you could see is, of course, a 200-key hotel, a 150-key hotel, and an 80-key hotel. And you could see easily 1 million square feet in an office complex that, you know, that could be dropped on that site plan, and just as easily, you know, there's a demand for that, and I don't think anybody would think those are crazy uses for today. But again, we want to get folks excited. And so that is going to be something that we are going to be talking to you all about and working hand in hand with you over time to really feel like, you know, we can get the most out of the project and something that the city gets very excited about. But again, not used in terms of repayment of the overall loan.
Don't dream big, you'll stay small.
That's right.
And that convention center will be able to convert to an ice hockey rink?
Arena.
If I was told me to dream, I want to dream.
Indoor soccer.
Pickleball.
Pickle plants.
Yeah.
Hardyville Stevens.
One last piece that I didn't speak to earlier, I do want to just also bring to your attention is the last piece of the TIF plan. So again, as I said earlier, let me just get this zoom in here. So again, exit 3. This piece here is parcel 1A. So as we were speaking earlier, you know, residential development in Riverport North. Parkway North gets built, exit 3 is online. We would envision grocery, big box, you know, small shop retail, obviously coming online to service all the rooftops that have been created over 25 years in Riverport North. So kind of the last piece of the TIF puzzle for us is that piece there north of the CSX line that services all the rooftops that have been created in Riverport North.
Michael, which is probably one, our big concern as we approve this, year 6, what's gonna pay the loan debt? What of all these parcels is gonna be up collecting taxes so we can repay the loan in year 6?
Yes, sir. Good question. So again, let's just kind of high level talk through the timeline. Riverport Parkway South starts construction early 2025, 18-month completion. It's online late 26. You know, we have a little bit of work, I think, to get Prosper Parkway built out, but I think we all feel like 18 months from now, that would be ideal to have Prosper Parkway in place as well. So what you have at that point is you've got all road work built to exit 3, and you've got Prosper Parkway built to Riverport Parkway North. 3 years from now, everything is built out, but Mr. Mayor, to answer your question, we feel like this piece is on the table. I mean, the reality is, call this a multifamily, call this a 300 unit multifamily project. That's going to take 2.5 years to build a multifamily project like that. So the idea, I think, is this construction can get started before Parkway South is finished. They can be built simultaneously, just like your Buc-ee's is going to get built, you know, along with exit 8. A significant portion of this development could be built alongside the Prosper Parkway extension. And then I think for vertical construction of any piece of this project, when you're looking at exit 3 being open in 3.5 years, you could realistically be talking 2 years from now about starting design, entitlement, and construction on any vertical piece of this project, because it would be delivered after exit 3 is open. So I think the answer to your question here is we would see this piece cranking early, and, the first 5 years of the TIF, we would see this piece cranking and this core here along Parkway South, all within the first 5 years.
Mayor, you were talking about year 6, right, after.
Well, year 6 being where we have to pay interest plus.
Exactly,
plus principal.
exactly.
So we have to be starting to collect taxes.
Ad valorem needs to come in.
Needs to start by year 6. Am I saying that right?
Is there any, manufacturing component in this, in the plans? The reason I say that is with the Mitsubishi plant being over there, it just seems like there may be a need for that
Yes, sir.
within these components.
If you go, could you go down to 17 where the end of?
Right here?
Okay. So
Darius has got something.
you see,
There's 4 million square feet right there.
right, but also that'll probably a lot be logistics.
Yep.
But over here, and I may be off, where's the Southern Carolina?
Right here.
Alliance?
Right there,
Right
that's
there.
the Sherwood track.
Okay,
Sherwood.
so that piece, that's the piece that the state owns and it's being marketed by the Southern Carolina Alliance.
Okay.
That's the piece more, if we do get an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer, which would be light manufacturing and those kind of jobs, it will most likely be in that piece there.
Harry, how many years has that been? The state's been trying to market that.
Well, the state gave the money
I know,
several years ago, probably 5-6 years ago.
at least.
And Southern Carolina Alliance is still
Well,
working on it.
the game changer is the fact that the mega plant has come online so
This-
quickly.
So quick.
And this is it. If that
yeah.
could turn into, manufacturing, I would see the housing components and those coming online a lot faster.
Absolutely.
Within the development, which would increase the year 6, how everything would fall into place.
And that's why we're, and I think you'll see Josh and I trying to poke the bear a little bit more to get that spot with an OEM.
I got a stick, you can borrow that.
Who's the bear?
Sharpen the end.
We'll talk stuff. We'll carry a big stick.
Yeah, so we have to make sure that we're voicing our concern that we get that OEM from the SCA.
The rooftops will need jobs, and if everything can fit into that whole complex that's between 17 and 95, it's a natural.
But you gotta worry about workers too. If something was a catastrophe.
Well, that's just it, the housing will come online with those workers. 21 over in Georgia, there's 800, 900 new apartments, just being marketed to workers for the mega plant. So, and it's coming online. Those apartments will be coming online when just about the same time the plant is up to full speed.
And that's why I like the multifamily is one of the first pieces.
Yes.
Because we are gonna need jobs. If you do the math, all these warehouses are usually subdivided. And let's just say they're like Home Depot, 50,000 square feet. 50,000 square feet between Clarius, Salt, Riverport, North Signal Capital, that's 17 million square feet. Divided by 50,000 is 340. 4,000 jobs, just with 12 per 50,000 foot. So there's, just in logistics, without the manufacturing, you're talking potentially on build out, which is, 15, 20 years, 4,000 new jobs just in those.
Yeah.
And then you take the OEM, if that's in there, it could be 1,000 jobs in a manufacturing plant. So there's those apartments and the other housing components in here, I think are gonna have real value because apartment builders are gonna see that those kind of jobs will be coming. And that would be great if, you could walk to work. those rooftops gonna need medical care. I love the medical component.
Well, it's according to what it is, because you asked that question, but it could be, yeah.
Yeah, it could be a big attraction
Exactly
to the overall, people moving into that area and, having jobs right there, having their medical care right there.
When I'm out talking to people in the public, that is one of the most frequent things that I hear. What are we doing to support additional medical services? Because if I call up my primary care provider, the earliest I can get it in is 6 months.
I know.
And so there's a definite demand for that if we can help support that, that should be a focus of ours.
I love that component, the potential for that area.
How long do you anticipate the connection to Prosper Parkway?
Well, that's a good question. We've talked, I'll let Josh take that one.
Well, so I learned earlier this week that there's a little bit of a gap in between the portions that they're responsible for and the portions that are within our Commerce Park. And so sitting here today, I don't have a great answer for you about what's gonna happen, but we're gonna get up to speed and figure out what we need to do to make sure that we bridge that gap to allow that connection to happen. But right now, it's sitting in a little bit of a limbo as far as I can tell. I think the city had looked at it a while back. Well, I don't even know if it's easements. We haven't started the permitting for that yet, and somebody needs to kind of take that on. And I think there have been discussions previously within the last year about the city doing that, but it's not really kind of moved forward. And so,
Would it be realistically to say then at the completion of exit 3, it would be possible to have that?
ideally, we'd like to have it open well before exit 3. We just don't have a great plan for it sitting here today.
Well, I mean, we have the road there, but until exit 3 is open, it doesn't go anyplace.
No, the road will be there for that parcel, it just won't connect to Hardyville Commerce Park.
Yeah.
But the road up to where they're responsible for
Yes.
will be done. So
Yes.
the road that accesses that medical complex, that part's done. What Josh is talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, is the last piece
This
that
piece right
connects
here.
That's it.
Commerce Park to this.
There's a little bit of a gap.
Yeah, it's built to here, and this property owner here can access pretty much all of his property by the road being built to there. And obviously, we pick up here. So you have this little small stretch here, and no fault of that property owner's, no fault on them. They're kind of like, we can already access our property. And we would love to see it built to there so we can complete that. And that, shows a whole lot better to prospective users to have that either under construction or built, so they know they can access 5 while all that's going on.
Thank you.
I have a question. There's been a lot of mention about multifamily units and a lot of things being marketed to multifamilies. I have not heard anything mentioned about schools in the area. I mean, are there any plans for schools to be built in that area?
You got a piece of ground.
Oh, yes, ma'am, absolutely. George, I mean, the development agreement obviously calls for it.
Right. The development agreement has obligations as it relates to conveying property to the school district and reserving the property. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess they would reserve a certain piece and then wait for the population.
If you go back to your first map, it's on there. It shows.
And then you'd wait until the population demanded enough to build a school.
There's the 2 school sites are there.
And school
There's one there?
could be any kind of school.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily have to be part of Jasper County School District. It could be a charter school, it could be any
Right,
kind of
right.
school.
Do note that your take from the TIF district, the 1,600 acres that Mike was talking about, that walked us through, only 35% of the revenue that's generated from that is being pledged to the loan. So you'll have 65% of the rest of the revenue going to the school district to help support building schools and functioning schools. In addition, that's only 1,600 acres of the overall 5,000 acres. So the rest of the property tax will also be going to the school to help support the school as the need increases, right, as things are built.
If you recall, years ago when we passed this, when the TIF zone starts generating taxes, 35%, as George said, goes to the repayment of the loan. And then it goes by your millage. Well, the schools have the highest millage of the three of us. So over the course of, was it 15 years, or I remember the number, the original 15-year loan, the school district will generate, I think it was $150 million of revenue. So they're gonna have plenty of revenue to do whatever they need to do. Now, that's the Jasper County School District. Because they, and, you know, so as the population grows, they're gonna have the money to do additional schools, if that's what they wanna do. But that's a good question, John, about the schools, because well, apartments and all these single family, they're gonna need, we're gonna need some kind of additional schools.
Sure looks great.
Good.
Well, we're excited.
Any other questions?
Council, we do have some members of the public here, so, council, any other questions before I turn it over to the public? I see we have some public here. Does anybody have any questions sitting in the audience? So this is great. So, Josh, this is gonna be on our agenda for next week?
Yes,
or-
we'll have at least a couple of items on the agenda, the revised intergovernmental agreement, the financing document, and potentially the development agreement as well.
Okay, so.
And they're all related to this, and they all are just being updated to reflect the new figures.
And the revised IGA we have from the bank?
Yes.
It's in, so the bank, we have that document, so we just have to approve that. And that's important, because once that IGA gets signed, now they can, you know, it can proceed, and Doug's gonna have that permit by next week too, Doug? Right?
Don't put me in the grave.
Did you feel the bus just went over you?
Yeah, you can call the lieutenant colonel when you get a chance and see how he feels about it.
Okay, waiting for the ball back, yeah, thanks a lot. The colonel is with the Army Corps of Engineers, and that's where the final permitting's coming in.
We fully expect it, Mr. Mayor, in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Michael's pretty generous. It could be first week in February, but I think we know the track we're on now, and everything's
Chairman White's
moving.
good with that?
Sorry?
Chairman White's good with that?
You know what I want to say, but yes, Chairman White's fine with it.
Yeah, but I think, Mayor, it's important to say effectively for us, as long as we update the IGA, the financing document, and the development agreement in a timely manner, this project remains with DOT. We'll go out to bid and we'll move forward, and we won't run into any timing issues.
Josh, if I could add one thing, I'd say, we have confirmed that the county has passed the IGA and loan agreements as well. So the county has already adopted what they need to do. So I think that's an important component of this as well.
We have 2 county councilmen sitting back there. Joey's sitting behind you.
Perfect. All right, thank you, Mike.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Can you give us
Yeah.
back to you?
Perfect.
And thank you all for driving down to the low country, appreciate it.
You have to go back to ice. That is ice and snow.
You got, yeah, Doug's from upstate, so he.
Oh, boy.
Uh-oh.
He's from all.
I kinda wish I could stay here.
Well, you can.
Well, I got a family, I better go back.
So our thought had been to take about a 10, 15-minute comfort break, and then we'll start preparing the materials for the Southwood discussion.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you, guys.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
That's good to see you. You're welcome. Appreciate it. Great. Take care of my hometown.
And our next topic is South Point, and Mr. Gruber, take us
Yes,
away.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, by way of a little bit of historical background, the city's been in discussions with South Point for a number of years now. A number of months ago, City Council voted to approve on first reading the infrastructure plan associated with this development. And actually, while I'm talking, if y'all could go ahead and get that pulled up for us. And so when it came to second reading, City Council had a number of questions, things that they'd ask for more information on. And so really, since I came on board in November, we've been going back and forth obtaining information from council on the questions and concerns that you have about the infrastructure plan that was being brought forward. And the development team has been providing responses to those questions. And so at your meeting in December, you voted to move consideration of second reading to the January 16th meeting. So this is going to be coming forward to you next week. And asked that there be a workshop held before that to try and finalize the discussion about answering those questions and getting those responses. And so that is the purpose of today's session. Is to really kind of let the development team come and help walk through addressing the questions and concerns that you've raised to this point. So with that information, I'll turn it over, and Kevin or Brian, I'm not sure which one of you want to walk through it, but the floor will be yours. Yeah, if you want to come up here, and we'll give you the clicker and the mouse, that way you can drive with your presentation materials. Or you can stand over there at the podium, whatever is more comfortable for you.
Well, members of council, good to see you all again. Happy New Year. Thank you, Juan. We do have all of our, well, when I say most of our team here today, and we're happy to go through most of these questions with you. I will say, we were prepared a year ago to submit this, and so hopefully we're making some more progress. But we have gone through each and every question very methodically, and Josh has been a big help. He's been a quick study on our project, and we've appreciated his time over the last few months getting up to speed. So in part, I think we're certainly at a place where we can go through each and every detail on all of your questions today, if you'd like. We have as much time as you need. So, I don't have a presentation again. I think you've heard probably enough of me over the last 3 years on this project, but if somebody would like to start, we will just take them one by one.
Okay. Open it up to council. Any questions?
Well, that's, I was gonna say, if we could, I think, Kevin, you've got a series of questions that you received from council. If you could help go through those, that way, in case council doesn't remember some of the questions that they asked, we'll make sure that we cover everything.
Yeah. I mean, are there any more important than others, Josh, or you really want us to go through each and every one of them?
I would just start at the top and we'll kind of work through it.
Okay. You want to take environmental first, Josh? Sure. Great. All right. So Kevin, I'll let you take it away on that one.
Good afternoon. Good to be back. Again, Happy New Year. We've got these divided into environmental questions, traffic, and then some basic other questions. So we have our consultants with us. We have our wetland consultant. And the first question was dealing with a wetland impact. There was some confusion on where this wetland impact is located. And so we just wanted to point that out. Where it is, I think we've been through this before. It's a nationwide permit that was received a few years ago, and it's for this John Smith Road crossing right here. So there's basically a quarter acre of impacts there, and we received the permit from the Army Corps of Engineers. The permit expires in March 14th, I believe, of 2026. There was a question about the timeline for that. There was a expiration for clearing to be done by a certain date, which we met. It was earlier this year in April. And so, that clearing has taken place. We had a permit with the city. And so we are active on that permit. And when you begin your work, you typically, the Army Corps gives you an extra year to finish the work, assuming you're in compliance, et cetera. So again, that deadline that I think everybody was looking at was connected to the nationwide permit, not the greater permit. And the deadline should be March of 2027, which give us plenty of time to complete that road work. Again, small impacts. This was a logging road. You see this dash line that used to be a logging road that would cross that wetland and entered the South Point West track. Let's see, that was questions 1 and 2. Then you got into some special flood hazard areas. These wetland crossings, these large wetlands are in a floodplain, and these right here. And so they are required to get a permit, special permit that you've identified. However, that permit is something that will be undertaken, the next stage of development. When the roadways are designed, our engineer will then get with the city's certified floodplain manager, and they would work with FEMA on getting the appropriate permits and that are kind of mentioned in your questions there.
Kevin, would it be accurate to say that it's the adoption of the infrastructure plan that then forms the basis for your additional permits that you're going to see?
That's correct, yes, sir. Thanks, Josh. So just curious, who is the city's certified floodplain manager? You'll have that?
Chris Yates.
There we go, Chris
Okay,
Yates.
all right, Chris. So,
Stephen, I think it is, isn't it?
well, Chris will work with our engineering firm, with Ward Edwards, and our Ward Edwards will provide them with all the necessary documentation, the flood study, et cetera. And then Chris is going to work obviously with FEMA, and then there'll be some back and forth, and that's how the process goes. But to Josh's point, that happens in that next level after we get overall infrastructure IMP approval. So that's questions 3 and 4 that you had. And then now we start diving into some additional ones that I think Brett Searing would be able to answer.
Can I ask one question for, just to make sure, when you talked about the wetlands permit and when it expires, when you said that you started, once you start clearing, then that means it's activated and they'll extend it?
Yes, sir.
But you have to do certain amount of clearing or something for them to?
Yeah, that kind of activates the permit, and that constitutes that. And it had to be done in our instance early because of some of the things Brett's going to go into with the bats, and the timeline. And so that kind of activated the permit. But we're proceeding, regardless, quickly on that roadway. Brett?
The language at the end of the permit, every nationwide permit has the same language. If you commence or are under contract to commence this activity before the nationwide permit program expires or modified, suspended, or revoked by the chief of engineers in accordance with the laws, you'll have 12 months after the date.
At the podium.
Yeah, but that's a good point.
We're recording this, and we need this for the record.
Sure, and I'm just quoting a portion of the nationwide permit. If you commence or are under contract to commence this activity before the nationwide permit expires or the nationwide permit is modified, suspended, or revoked by the chief of engineers or division engineer in accordance with 33 CFR 330.5 B or C, in such a way that the activity would no longer comply with the terms and conditions of the nationwide permit, you will have 12 months after the date of the nationwide permit expires or is modified, suspended, or revoked. Complete the activity under the present terms and conditions. They have a 12-month grace period. If you're already working on it, which clearing the trees constitutes as starting on it, then they allow you to finish your project as previously approved rather than seeking approval again for the same exact thing. Excuse me. So question 5 that you posed to us regarding bats and threatened and endangered species and the work that we've done to this point. 3 species of bats have been listed amongst other endangered species to include the long-eared bat and the recently proposed tricolored bat. Just some clarification. There's 2 species of bats, according to Fish and Wildlife, that have the potential to exist on the property. The northern long-eared bat, which the process for dealing with them was not really finalized with Fish and Wildlife until earlier this fall, a couple months ago. That species was uplisted from threatened to endangered, and crossing that threshold from threatened to endangered requires more in-depth investigation into whether your project has any impact on that species. The other bat would be the tricolored bat, and the tricolored bat is proposed endangered. And so because it's proposed, there is no heightened regulations regarding investigation into it. It's still considered, and in our coordination with Fish and Wildlife, the impacts on that species will be considered and mitigation measures will be put in place if they're determined to be present, that will, mitigate impacts as much as possible to the species. But really the northern long-eared bat is the one that Fish and Wildlife is going to focus on in this. To that point, so I just want to give you all some confidence as far as what's required under the Endangered Species Act when you seek a federal permit like we're seeking. So when you apply to the Corps of Engineers for a Section 404 of the Clean Water Act permit, right, whether it's a nationwide permit or an individual permit, endangered species need to be considered, right? That's not to say you're not responsible to the ESA, even if you're not obtaining a federal permit. However, if you are obtaining a federal permit, there's a regimented series of steps in coordination with agencies that you need to go to. So in preparation for seeking this permit that we're going to obtain, we conduct kind of a cursory habitat assessment, of what we call a pedestrian survey. Basically, we survey the site, look for specific habitats, because generally, and bats are sort of an exception to this, but most threatened and endangered species, they're at risk, they're in peril because they have a very specific habitat, right? And that's kind of the limiting resource. Bats are interesting because the way Fish and Wildlife defines bat habitat is a single tree within 1,000 feet of a contiguous 10-acre forest, really. So we can't live in the place in the world that we live in without, there being a block of 10 acres of trees somewhere within 1,000 feet, right? So back to our preliminary investigations and what we prepare to submit to the Corps along with our permit application. We do an exhaustive pedestrian survey. We document all the habitat types. We produce a threatened and endangered species survey report. That is Section 7 in our individual permit. I'm assuming y'all have been provided a copy at some point. A copy of the permit?
Yeah.
A hard copy of it?
Yes.
Okay. So we've got a hard copy of that if y'all would like to go through it. What that does is takes our survey that we went through and did on the property, then uses a number of coordination and consultation resources, primarily being Fish and Wildlife's information for planning and consultation tool. You enter a shape file for your project area into their tool. It spits out all the species that are regulated under the ESA that have the potential to exist on your site. You then go down through each one of those species, assess the types of habitat they use, and make an educated guess, a judgment call based on years of experience doing this and a deep understanding of what the species needs to thrive. And you make an assessment, an effects determination, excuse me. So you go through each species, you make an effects determination. That's basically your assessment of whether or not the proposed project would have any number of a series of terms that they use. But most generally, if you're not if you're not impacting a species directly, if there's no intentional take, it'd be may affect, not likely to adversely affect is the language that's used. So we did that. The next step in all of that is we coordinate through South Carolina DNR's online consultation program. It's basically a website. You do the same thing. Send them the information you have on your project, what you intend to do, and they review your information, produce a consultation sheet, send you a letter back that says, you know, according to the information that you've submitted, this is what we think of the project. There's a number of other tools that are referenced. NOAA has a tool. We're clearly not near, and we don't have any body of water on the site that would have NOAA regulated fisheries on it or anything like that. And then the last step is, and this goes back to Fish and Wildlife again, for the species that you have, that there's habitat on site. They have what's called the determination key, and it's more project specific. You know, you enter acreages of clearing, you enter wetland impacts. Depending on the species, there's different questions, but it gets more into the weeds about does this project truly have the potential to affect the species. So you fill out the determination keys for the northern long-eared bat at that point in time, when the final guidance wasn't released and the survey protocol wasn't finalized. The determination key resulted in a may affect, not likely to adversely affect for us. So that's all of the preliminary. Yes, sir.
If I could try to make a somewhat general, because that was a very technical.
Yes, I know. I'm sorry. I don't know another way to talk about it sometimes.
If I can try to make a generalized statement for the benefit of council and the public, your requirements to comply with the Endangered Species Act are included within your 404 permit. And if you have not appropriately addressed either the identification or the mitigation of any impacts, you will not receive your permit.
100% correct.
Okay.
And the agencies, South Carolina DNR,
Reader's Digest.
South Carolina DNR, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and the Corps of Engineers will hold us accountable if we haven't sufficiently covered our responsibilities. Section 7 consultation is what that's called. But moving forward, where we are at this point in the project, our permit has been submitted, and we've initiated coordination with Fish and Wildlife. Since we submitted the permit, the survey protocol has been finalized. They've issued that as a guideline for us to use. And because that's been finalized, that allows us to take the next more in-depth step, right? So in our discussions with Fish and Wildlife, what we're going to do is an acoustic survey, right? We've got basically remote microphones. They look like a deer trail camera. You put an ultrasonic microphone in the front of it, an SD card in it, and 8 lithium batteries. You record at specific locations on the site that are determined to be good habitat. If you pick up bat calls, well, regardless if you pick up bat calls or not, you take the audio data, you run it through a program that identifies bats to species. It's really incredible. It really is interesting.
Pictures of Bigfoot out of this.
If I get one, I'll send it to you. But yeah, so the next step, the in-depth investigation is going to include things like that. The result of that presence or absence survey, they call it. If we determine that there's bats on the site, then Fish and Wildlife, depending on what we find, we may go more in depth, or it may just be that, you know, we accept that these certain habitats on the site, bats exist there, and they'll give us, you know, X, Y, and Z. Here are mitigation measures we'd like to see you implement in order to not adversely affect the species.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
There are a number of roads crossing over wetlands. We have the one at 17B and 16, or 15, whatever that is, and then up by parcel 7. Do any of those crossings have the 404 permit yet?
Just the crossing that Kevin already talked about at 17A.
17A.
The rest of the wetland impacts for the entire,
Others do not.
no, sir, not yet.
And this, the document we saw that had the March 14th, 26 deadline is the parcel A.
Right there between 17A and 17B.
So that's the only one that we have permitting or permits submitted of all the roads that pass wetlands. That's the only one at this time.
That's the only one that's approved right now, yes, sir. The rest of them are submitted, have been submitted since June.
So,
How far into the process? Since June was quite a ways back. I mean,
Typically a 12 to 18-month process for an individual permit. And that,
do you receive updates of where it's at in the process as it's going on?
we do, yep, there's constant communication between, like I said, that all this communication I'm talking about with Fish and Wildlife is part of that process.
so the question I had about that, and I was going through your PCN here, and it talks about work includes filling 0.252 acres of jurisdictional wetlands on both sides of the existing road to achieve the necessary road width.
Yes, ma'am.
So is that the one that's crossing the wetland thing? So I see the drop kind of road. Now, I don't, is that the 0.252 acres that you're talking about? That
Yes.
road that's going to be crossing all of that?
Yeah, so, yeah, currently there's a logging road, a barely above grade logging road.
Okay.
That was determined to be upland, not wetland. It cuts through the wetland. There's a couple of small pipes that go underneath it.
Now, is that the one that you're calling Road A?
No.
Yes, okay.
It is, okay. So my question is, do you plan on going forward, assuming you get approval for this project, is that Road A going to be used as a construction road? That will be dropping traffic onto John Smith?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, excuse me.
Goes right in.
Use of that logging road or use of the permitted crossing as a construction access.
That's right, yes. I mean, that-
Which
that's-
is the logging, because there's, on the other one, there's a little logging road that comes out on John Smith right before Pine Arbor.
Just
Is that the
before
one?
Pine
That's what I'm
Yes.
thinking about.
But that's not, that's the logging, that's not the road, it's not the road where his pointer is. There's a little logging road. Go to the other map, please.
Yeah, the one that has all the colored stuff on it.
Yeah, the one you just left.
There you go. Okay.
So down here, see the dotted line?
It's somewhere over in here, there was a site.
No, this is Pine Arbor. There's a little
Right.
dirt road. Is that the road you're talking about?
That's the
Will be
logging
the
road.
construction.
So is that the one that's called Road 2A?
This
In,
is-
in one of the maps that I looked at, it's.
That's Road A,
That's
correct.
going to be, okay, that's named Road A. So, and you guys have plans to use that as a construction road going forward, or?
The construction part of it, and we have an exhibit for that, when we get into that
Okay.
portion, is gonna be, it's not gonna be here, it's gonna be here. And it'll kind of, reconnect. That was the whole reason, is we needed to align with Pine Arbor Road and abandon the old access location, just because of proximity and safety.
How far down the line are you anticipating building in 17A and B?
Mr. Mayor, when you said, when is that going to happen?
Yeah. I mean, what is your development plan from start? How are you going to develop this property through the process? You've got a lot of parcels on there. You're obviously not going to start them all at once.
No, sir. The way it looks like it's, parcel 13 would probably be the first parcel developed, and moving from left to right, if you will. And utilizing, if you notice, we're here to talk to you a little bit about the construction safety traffic plan as well tonight or today. But you utilize some of the easement that we have there on the southern tip of our property, and also utilizing that new Pine Arbor Road that is being moved from the old Timber Road over to align with Pine Arbor.
Okay.
And then I thought, well, and I don't want to go back, but on what the mayor was asking on our wetlands, I think we clarified, DOT is taking the top portion from us, Mr. Mayor. They're taking up there right when you come off of across from the hospital. So that section, it will be handled by SCDOT, that entire area. So that, I feel pretty confident about that permit. And then there's 2 other sections. And then, of course, we've got the 1 section approved. So that section still is out there. But there was an old crossing, as you've noted here, that was approved. We're just shifting it slightly to align with DOT's road work. And then, of course, down on parcel 11, is that where so parcel 11 to parcel 16, there's another small crossing.
Yeah, that's just clipping a wetland. That's not really a crossing.
I was talking, but isn't there another one, Kevin?
Right here. And then future. That's right.
Okay.
So we just saw from Riverport, they showed us, big map, and they said, okay, parcel, this is gonna be the first one, this is gonna be the second one, this is gonna be the third one. Could you run us through your vision of how this is gonna be developed? What goes first, what goes second, what goes third? Just what you anticipate.
Okay, yeah, so again, it's not an exact science at this point. Obviously,
Yeah.
and part of that reason is being, we've been on hold to some degree with our negotiations, but parcel 13, we have a lot of interest in. I think that'll be the first parcel developed. And then, like I said, I think we'll be moving from south to north, all the while, the DOT road work will be going in at our main entrance. And then I think, again, we don't, the truth of the answer is we don't know exactly, the sequence. But if I had to guess, it would be from parcel 13 to the north.
So 13, after 13, what's next?
Well, parcel 13 to parcel 11. Okay, so those are our 2 that we've got
That's
some.
1, 2. What's number 3?
Number 3, if I had to guess, would be, again, some of this is predicated on DOT doing their work, right? So again, again, we're moving from south to north, and we just don't have, again, it's all development 101. We will develop as things progress. But again, I think we go from 13 to 11, and then parallel process. Hopefully some of the retail will come online, and then we'll move towards parcel 15. We've had some interest in parcel 15, but nothing confirmed.
Previous discussions, I was under the impression that you were gonna start on the north end in parcel, looking at 15, 16A and B, because your spine road was only gonna run up to that crossroad right there. Now you're shifting your anticipated start over to 13, 12, 13, and 11?
Yes, Mr. Mearsman, well, make sure I answer this correctly. We have put a pause on parcel 15 based on, the delays we've, encountered here, okay? So we still are committed to building that first portion of the spine road like we've always talked about, but we have put parcel 15 on hold until we understand our timeline.
Kevin, am I correct in thinking that you'll still need to come forward for initial master plans for all of these parcels?
That's correct.
When it comes to the actual timing, we'll be able to see that by virtue of the fact of what you are submitting for that subsequent.
Absolutely correct. So let's just say we receive approval next week. I would say the next 60 days after that, we'll be in with parcel 13 for an IMP on that site.
And after 13, parcel 11.
Right. But that's really the only certainty we can give you, parcel 13 and parcel 11 right now. And then we're, I think Brett just showed up, but I think, we've got, where are we with our water and sewer permits?
We're still working through those.
So at any event, once we get some of those permits finalized, then we'll begin construction on the infrastructure.
Another question. Originally, going back to June 22, parcel 17 and 18 was brought forth at that time. What's the time frame of developing parcel 17A and B?
Again, we'd like to develop it, sooner than later, but there is no current timeline for that.
I was under the impression of the north to south build out. Now, Brian, I have some grave concerns because to clear that land, your only access to get the trees and everything else out of there are going to be Pine Arbor Road. And we've discussed this, that the safety has got to be an issue. Plus, the fact is probably within the next 16 months, the bridge will be gone over 95 for a period of time. So what would your plans be? To take your logging trucks back Pine Arbor to 278 or over Pine Arbor to 46? It's the only two ways out of there.
Right. Well, yeah. And I mean, we're still not opposed to even though we're not developing the sites on the north side, Mr. Mearsman, I think we'd still work through this construction safety plan, which we hope you'll be involved in.
I mean, are you talking about running a construction road through the process? You're gonna be crossing your wetlands with the construction road also, Brian?
Yes, sir. Well, I think this needs to continue to evolve, but we understand the importance of this safety. So Pine Arbor, back towards the bridge that we're talking about, the South Bridge, looks like it's going to be shut down for a period of maybe up to 12 months. So I think that there's a opportunity there to utilize that dead time, to improve Site 13. Okay, and that's one of our ideas. We're starting at Site 13, Parcel 13. So we'd utilize that blocked off road. And then we've talked about accentuating the John Smith Spine Road entrance there, as I guess right at parcel 16A and 16B. We've got some ideas, and we'll blow those up for you, Mr. Mearsman, show you how we can make those safer during the construction period. And then the same thing with the new Pine Arbor alignment, how we can improve some sight lines, how we can put some temporary gravel, ingress and egress, and then some what we call runway. So I think but again, I see you want to come across from the north side, but I think we've actually got a way to mitigate some of that. And again, Site 15 could come along very quickly, and if it does, we'll be right back to you with a game plan. But right now, and not blaming anyone, but you can imagine some of our interested parties have been watching this process, and they can't be as flexible with the timeline. So some of those deals have faltered because of that.
Well, with that said, our flexibility with the safety of the public is also involved with this. You're saying that, improving your sight lines there at Pine Arbor, yes, that bridge will be gone for a period of time, but then it will be open again. The traffic on Pine Arbor is still gonna be, and John Smith is still gonna be fairly heavy because people will use Pine Arbor to come to downtown Hardeeville. They're not all gonna run down 278 to 17 and go that way. I'd like to know what your improvements for the sight line to make it safe actually are. That it's a big deal.
We get that now. And we realize how important it is. We did get our SCDOT access approval, which was great. So, and they have got some strict guidelines for the construction. Our engineer, I don't know if we've got that language, but some of the requirements that we will impose upon any contractor, we'll review with you with the city, but we'll make sure those are mandatory. I think back to Josh's point, let's just say we came in with parcel 17, and it didn't appear to be a safe game plan. I think we'll be here again talking through how are we going to make it safe. So we understand that, I guess this approval next Thursday night doesn't mean we have carte blanche to do whatever we want. We're coming back to you each and every time saying, how do we isolate this and make this safe?
Well, high traffic times on John Smith that we're going to have. Would it be unreasonable to have a request in there that during those high traffic times, the logging trucks are not entering and exiting through that time? There's a lot of hours in a day when they're not in there. There's a compromise in here somewhere, and we're gonna have to find it.
Yes, sir, I agree with that. Caitlin, you want to say something?
I was going to speak to the typical standard notes on design plans include limitations on timeframes for when construction can happen. So for John Smith Road, I think it's between those peak hours of 7 to 9 and 4 to 6, no construction can happen.
Okay, thank you.
But yes, Mr. Mearsman, so the logging is a big concern of yours, right?
Very big, very big.
And-
Those trucks they're very long, they don't move quick.
Mm-hmm. So I think we will, and I'm not sure if we want to designate somebody from the city, but we'll comply to SCDOT standards. We'll also work with anything the city comes up with, maybe a staging period, maybe a flag man, like you just said, maybe some structured timing. But I do feel like we can come up with a scenario that will make that safe. I mean, obviously, we're not the only congested area in the country developing, so there's a way to do this safely.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Going to the transportation side of this, we have a tentative agreement that the intersection improvements will be paid for by the Morgan people, right? So that includes some turning lanes at the intersection. My concern about that, after that's done, then John Smith Road goes back to a 2-lane, no-shoulder road. And there's 1,400 homes between 13, 12, 11, and 17. 1,400 units density approved in those parcels. And with construction and all the other things, they're gonna be coming out onto that 2-lane road. I keep envisioning Argent Boulevard too, okay? I'll just throw this out there. Shouldn't John Smith Road now be the responsibility of South Point and Morgan to make it 4 lanes to I-95? Because 2 lane, we're creating, I'm afraid, we're creating Argent Boulevard all over again. Because what we're not seeing here are the curb cuts from Morgan Track that we looked at the Planning Commission yesterday. They have also planned, again, down the road, because we're envisioning the future. None of this is gonna happen probably in my lifetime, but our responsibility is to the future. So you've got not only these 2 curb cuts, you've got, I think they said 2 from the Morgan Track down the road. So envisioning the future, I think there should be some obligation to widen John Smith Road to 4 lanes, just like we have now, so you don't have the situation like you have on Argent. 2-lane road, no shoulder, very unsafe with a whole lot of homes being built. And so I think that should be part of the ask.
Am I wrong in when we saw the initial, that it would show 3 lanes on a lot of that of John Smith?
Yeah. Well, what happened now, and this is why I'm going back to the question. The initial was that lane improvements at the intersection. And it would be lane improvements from the South Point side and lane improvements from the Morgan side. Morgan's taking it all over and they're just doing the intersection. So the question is, what's happening after Morgan improves the intersection? It's a few hundred feet. Do you know how many feet, Josh?
No, it's somewhere between, I think between 300 to 400 feet is what I was thinking.
Okay, so only
Yeah.
400 feet and then it goes back to a 2-lane road.
Yes, we discussed that.
And so that's my concern. Okay, we improved the intersection, you get a light there eventually, everything is fine, and then you go back to a 2-lane road.
So I think we would need to look at that as a component of external DA fees, because I believe that's how you've taken that up with other similar developments in looking at infrastructure improvements outside of the boundaries of the property itself. We've historically collected external DA fees, correct?
But this was approved 2 years ago. Do we have a DA agreement that has that in there?
I don't know, and if we
I don't think so.
And if we
Because
don't-
what Mike did was take off road DA fees and put it on the developer to do the road work. As opposed to putting in DA fees.
Okay.
Put it on the developer to do the road improvements. And that's why I think that should be, come back up. You know, review that DA agreement. Are there road DA fees in here? That can eventually be, because otherwise, then the public, 20 years down the road, 15 years down the road, has to do another referendum to pay for the widening of this road.
That's Argent 2, which is what.
And it, right, and it becomes on the public to widen the road.
We'll have to look at that. The one thing I will say, though, that I know has changed is with the Morgan Tract folks coming forward and looking to pay for those intersection improvements, that does eliminate obligations that some of the other developers like South Point might have otherwise had, which in theory then could open up some funding to potentially pay for that. Now, how far does that dollar stretch? I don't know. We'll need to look into that a little bit more.
I would also like to make a comment. In part of the SCDOT approval of our TIA, they did call that out. There is going to be a bridge improvement over 95, but that's limited to 2 lanes. So if you widen it all the way down to that bridge, it's still going to be a bottleneck.
That's true.
I remember, if I remember, we went from 5 at the intersection, the way it's laid out, to 3, and eventually, I think it was right after Pine Arbor that it went back to the 2 lanes.
It was always that.
2 lanes, they improved.
That's what's
No,
illustrated.
that's why I'm saying go up to I-95, because the bridge is gonna be 2.
That's right.
Okay, but all the curb cuts, these from South Point and the 2 from Morgan, and whatever's on parcel 18, if that becomes a storage unit, there's gonna be a curb cut there. You know, so now all these curb cuts are gonna be on a 2-lane road. Same situation we have with Argent, and that, you know, that's gonna create a problem. So now, go back to the question, where are 3 lanes going up to?
I was going to continue my comment. From part of DOT's approval, they have called out because we have curb cuts along the way and turn lane improvements recommended because of the widening, necking down, tapering back and forth. DOT did mention there should be consideration to look at John Smith. They didn't say a specific segment definition, but they have been paying attention to that. And with it being their road and their jurisdiction, they're not going to let it get out of hand. But DOT did approve this with the recommendations that we had, along with timeframes and timelines of when they expect these improvements to go into. And they've also given Morgan Tract the TIA approval and has asked for their coordination to be included in this moving forward also. So South Point and Morgan are both going to have to coordinate with this John Smith Road segment.
In the exhibit you see there, that was contemplated to be widened, Mr. Mayor, from here all the way past Pine Arbor Road and then the taper here, where it felt like it was appropriate section.
I think if you would enlarge that and focus down on that, on John Smith, I think you'll be able to see. Scroll
So
down.
that's
There you
3
go.
lanes, and that's being paid for by South Point?
Morgan, that's right.
And also the Swigert as a.
Yeah, there's a responsibility for Millstone Landing, which is Swigert Tract.
And to answer your question, there is some allocation of DA fees, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Prina just showed.
Is this per your TIA, the widening requirement, is that what the TIA is showing?
The TIA will work without the widening, but that is something that DOT has called out.
So they're responsible. So according to the DA does require the developers to pay for those type of improvements. In addition to that, this DA does have a road fee. It was not split into internal, external. The city has the right to use that for road improvements at their discretion. And there is a road fee per residential unit and commercial.
So South Point will pay for all those internal roads, and the DA fees will go into a bank that can be used on John Smith Road. Do I have it right?
You can use them on John Smith Road, you're not required to, because it sounds that because their DOT's requiring them to do it, it's their responsibility as well.
What I'm just trying to get at is South Point will take care of the interior roads and will build up a bank of road fees for wherever the city
Wherever
wants
John
to.
Smith.
Karina, per the
John
term-
Smith or wherever we want to use, it, correct?
Per the terms of the development agreement, does the city have unilateral discretion on the use of the road fees or? Okay, so then the answer is yes, we could choose to use 100% of those funds towards those improvements.
You know, love to see an overlay of what Morgan Tract is looking for their curb cuts based on what this is.
It was at the planning commission yesterday, so we'll see that at our workshop. We have February 4th.
And I think they can speak to that a little bit today too, because I think you've been coordinating.
We're being asked to vote on this next week.
We have, this reflects what they've sent us. This is, Lamar sharing information with Willie Powell. There again, they have no curb cuts up until this point.
Okay.
They've shared this access. This is specific to them. They don't oppose that at all. That's why that third lane makes sense. Frankly, that's supposedly a bus access too. And then we've got this access. I can't speak for Morgan beyond this side, but we've coordinated everything that's pertinent to us.
Thank you.
So that's the two Morgan curb cuts.
The two primary ones.
Yes.
On 19A and below parcel 17. Those are two Morgans.
So my question is back to all of this the possibility of using that road as a construction road. And I'm talking the one that's going to butt with Pine Arbor. You guys are going to use that as a construction road, correct?
But yes, ma'am, but we want to clarify, there's an old construction road there now that will be abandoned, okay?
Okay.
And we agree that's not an adequate entrance, okay? So if you notice the new and improved Pine Arbor alignment, that will be the primary construction road.
Road,
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
So here's my fear about all of this. I mean, we know it's a 55-mile-per-hour road. Right now, we have 2 lanes. So when do you envisage putting that third lane in to bypass, that will pass all of those entrances in and then taper on towards the left? When is that going to happen? What's the timeline?
Like I said, I think it's going to evolve. When it's required, we'll put it in or put our portion in. But what I will say is, we don't think we need it day one. But when we come back to you, Mrs. Guzman, if you're on the council, we'll, let's just say we're developing Site 17 and you say we need it, then obviously our development, we will not be able to proceed without it.
Okay, so here's my question going into that is, okay, let's say, for example, you're going to use that Road A as a construction road, okay? And you're going to have logging trucks going in, going out. So my question is, if you have, and you will see from my traffic issue questions that I put out to you guys, if you have these multi-axle vehicles coming in to transport the logs, to bring heavy equipment in, to take dirt in, dirt out kind of thing, these are multi-axle vehicles that don't stop on a dime. My question is, because it's still going to be a 2-lane road until you guys decide to make it 3, are these vehicles going to be allowed to sweep into the oncoming traffic in order to make that turn to get up the construction road, to get into your development and vice versa coming out?
That's a good question, but would you be agreeable to a MOU to provide a flagger or something that would be acceptable to the Hardeeville PD during these construction times?
I think what I would say is if we come back in front of you and we want to develop Site 17 and you say, guys, I'd like this to be conditioned upon you having a flag man during your logging operation, we'll acquiesce, okay? So I think I'd like to.
But you're going to be clearing parcel 13.
Or I'm just picking one. If
Yeah.
you said 13,
I
Mr.
mean,
McClure, we're not giving you the.
If you will agree in writing to make it as safe as humanly possible, I can see how it can work.
Okay, well, I've heard you loud and clear, and I can assure you, every step of the way, let's take that and address that and
Well, so I think what we can do is, because they've got to come back forward for their initial master plan, please be aware that as part of your initial
Right.
master plan, you will need to provide specific information about how that will.
we were calling it, I think we've even got an exhibit for Mr. Mears, construction, safety, traffic plan. And so that needs to be you can help us author that, Mr. Mearsman, and we'll just, that'll be part of every single internal
And
development.
something to keep in mind, because I think there might be an opportunity to use the closing of John Smith Road with DOT's work to somewhat of a benefit, is that road will be closed as of Pine Arbor. And so coming into and off of John Smith, there will be no conflict of traffic beyond that, other than DOT's contractors presumably.
That's right.
And so, again, from a timing standpoint, if we're looking at, DOT is gonna get this ball rolling sometime in the next 6 to 8 months, and then John Smith's gonna be closed for the next 12 months beyond that, potentially you could time that to say, we'll use the portion of John Smith where there are no traffics because it's being detoured, and that would, at least for that time frame, address some of those concerns. Now, it doesn't alleviate it long-term going forward when John Smith opens back up, but I think the expectations are clear.
That's right, and that is our intent, Mr. Gruber. And you got to remember, the construction has a definitive start and a day. It doesn't go on for eternity. So, granted, the project's probably a 2 to 10 year project, but that's why I like starting on that southern end, because we might be able to take advantage of that shutdown.
But it doesn't negate the fact that you're still going to be using, the traffic on Pine Arbor is not gonna stop, because everyone's gonna use Pine Arbor as a detour, coming down John Smith, use Pine Arbor as a detour to get to where they need to go. So my thing is, what do you do with the traffic coming up and down and going towards Pine Arbor when these logging trucks are on deck? I mean, how do you prevent, and to me, it's a scary situation, and to me, the primary thing right now is, the primary thing right now is the safety of the people, because I am actually afraid to think of what can happen at that intersection, because as we know, JS is untenable in its current state. We have no shoulders to speak of, so even a car, if it wants to avoid a situation, that it can go off-road. So, we are here for the benefit of the taxpayers. I'm not here for the benefit of the developer. They have the right to build what they need to build, but we also have the responsibility towards the people that's using those roads. So.
And I'll also make a comment that, as DOT's given approval to move forward to the encroachment permit application stage, the construction entrances and traffic control operations, those things happen in that process. And with the mention of DOT doing the bridge replacement over 95 and having John Smith closed for a little bit, there's going to be extensive coordination between that going on and also this potentially going on. So DOT is going to have their hands on this.
I think we've gotten the message about this. Can we move a little forward on that? I mean,
Well, let's make sure we have all the questions.
I think,
I still
okay, yeah,
have
to the next question is my point.
But go back to the timetable. The bridge will be replaced as the widening goes up. So, or does it go before the widening gets there?
That's
Because the
why
widening won't get there for 3 years.
Correct, no, and that's why I was checking with Neil on that, because DOT's been providing us with some prospective schedules. And my understanding is they're gonna start at exit 5 first, and then John Smith Road second. So those would actually come online before the widening efforts down by the border, correct?
So they're gonna start the improvements and the bridge replacement prior to the widening getting up to that point, is that correct?
That is the schedule that DOT has provided to us.
Bridges first.
They would be doing that simultaneously.
Yeah.
So it would be going on the same time.
Now, the other question that has come up before about timing. Right now, John Smith Road is an F+, right? So it's failed. Nothing else happens, it's a failing road. We have the X million of dollars improvements that Morgan's gonna do at the intersection. Does that get done first before anything happens here?
From my perspective, that is absolutely.
But it's not your development.
Yep.
What's the plan?
I think I've always stated, Caitlin, you can get more technical. We're not moving forward unless we're doing what's adequate to move traffic through there. I mean, I don't know that we're ever gonna get it to an A grade, but if we come to you and we wanna develop parcels, let's go back to 17, and there's improvements to be made, then I think, then Josh is gonna help us work through that.
And I do think part of the answer to that question relies upon whether or not the city's ultimately successfully able to enter into an MOU with the Morgan Tract folks. We think conceptually that's what might happen, but we don't know that. But I think from a very high level standpoint, everybody would agree that with the Morgan Tract, with South Point, or with Hilton Head Lakes West, the intersection at John Smith and 278 needs to be the first priority before any of them are activated.
And that's the question. What's the timetable? Because if this all starts before the improvements at 278 and John Smith get done, we got a mess. And that's why the question is, should not this intersection be taken care of first, regardless of who does it, before we get going on this? Because you've got, that's gotta be done, the bridge has gotta be done, now you add this on top of it. There should be some sort of, and I don't know who does it, but schedule so that, we don't create an absolute mess when the construction starts. I think we need that kind of a schedule, and I think we need an MOU from Morgan to say, okay, it's gonna be done. I don't wanna approve this, and then Morgan says, well, I changed my mind. It's not that it's likely to happen, but we have to anticipate, as Mrs. Guzman said, we have to be concerned about the safety when all this is taking place.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, please.
you'll have the benefit of our approval for Josh Johnson in our TIA. He specifically addresses that. He requires some of these things that you're talking about in his approval. That's in the documents.
From Josh?
That's correct.
Who's Josh?
He's the DOT.
Johnson is Mr. Personality of DOT.
Oh, that Josh
Yeah,
Johnson.
that one.
Okay, because, if you're
I
talking
didn't
about
say that.
logging coming out, I mean, the logs are going over. If that intersection is improved, I mean, did DOT approve this plan based on the existing that's there?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
They approve beginning of your project the way John Smith is right now?
The intersection with 278? No, we have to do improvements.
That answers all the questions. Nothing starts until that's fixed.
And I'm pretty sure, Mr. Mearsman, that same comment is in the Morgan Tracts TIA as well.
Okay, that answers a lot of the questions.
And the other thing I'll point out, even, let's just say things go as planned, which they never do. Parcel 13 is our first one, Mr. Mearsman. If I was a betting man, you wouldn't even see construction activity until Q1 of 2026. Okay? So, I mean, and that's even optimistic. So this is a slow process.
I do think that window is gonna be there with John Smith. And, I think the obvious thing to do, if, again, this becomes our first development, timing works out, is we can move our construction access 100 feet, past that intersection. I mean, this will be closed down. I mean, we don't have to mess with that and kind of figure out a way. That way they're on the road safely, Ms. Guzman, and ready to make their next move.
Okay, so, all right, so I'm a person of simplicity. So let's say you have a lane here and a lane here, okay? The way it is on John Smith. You have a logging truck coming in, and they want to turn into whatever road, wherever you put it, is going to create the same issue. You have that logging truck coming down here, and you have whatever's coming down this way, and it's going to have to cross. So if you tell me that you're going to put the entrance to the logging truck past Pine Arbor, well, that may change some things a little bit, but, it's still, I don't know, it still scares me.
Caitlin mentioned in a report that DOT does not allow for overlapping the lanes at all. That's all going to be taken into consideration internal to our project in the way of radius on our gravel road and the length and depth of our road as you come in that area. They are not allowed to overlap.
Okay, so my question is, if you have a logging truck that's coming in multi-axle, okay, it's not like my little rinky-dink 2006 Honda that turns on a dime. These vehicles need a huge turning radius in order to make that turn safely on the road, onto wherever they're gonna go. Because it's not just the safety of the folks that are on the road, also you have to worry about the driver of that dump truck or whatever it is, because heaven forbid, something shifts on his load and in the center of gravity moves, that truck is turning over. So now you're gonna have a big mess on the road, you're blocking John Smith, there's traffic gonna be backed up, and those are the things I think about down the road. I mean, it's,
I would say DOT has requirements on the design vehicle, and you're calling out tractor trailers. That's going to be like your biggest design vehicle, and typically that's what's used for turning radius paths because that back tire, as you know, has that shorter
correct,
turning path.
yeah.
So that can't overlap lanes. That's like a DOT standard requirement that's not allowed to happen.
So you're still gonna have you're going to still need wider lanes, so which means wider lanes to me means more lanes in order not to overlap the oncoming traffic.
It'll be based off of the turning radius design, however that flows. If the truck can make the turn, then that's acceptable. If the truck cannot make the turn, it's not acceptable.
So what you're
It's going to be coordinated with DOT on what design and what improvements are needed.
So basically what you're explaining to me right now is they take into consideration the swept path analysis of these semis and other multi-axle vehicles? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, so that tractor trailer is going to be the worst case, so that's what they're going to consider.
So which means a wider throat at the entrance to the road, okay?
Yes, correct.
This is a traffic question in the TIA. In looking at the TIA, it said that John Smith is an F+ right now, correct?
It's the minor street approach. So 278 in the existing's not in that report or that number that's presented. It's the John Smith approach that's major delay.
Okay, so that's F+. Has the additional Morgan Track, Project 95, and all the traffic that's going to bring, was that part of the analysis, or just the additional traffic from South?
I want to confirm something. Project 95, are you talking about the logistics center?
Yes.
Yes, that was included as part of scoping with SCDOT. Morgan Track was included and in the supplemental for the city because we couldn't do that with DOT. But everything that we've been asked to do for background traffic, we have incorporated.
Okay, so if I recall, and I didn't bring the sheet with me, these improvements at the intersection take that F+ to a D. Am I correct?
Yes.
So my question is, since when is D good?
By DOT threshold standards, D is acceptable.
Wow.
And it's not uncommon for a lot of the intersections on 278 now.
278 isn't working well. And that's why we're gonna spend $65 million of taxpayer money to widen it.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to say the TIS that DOT was presented did not include the widening. And with the improvements we recommended, that intersection would still be an acceptable D. And then with all the additional background growth that we included from traffic that DOT could not accept and the widening, we are still at a D.
Thank you.
I think we've beaten the traffic to death.
So we kind of got cut off at the environmental study thing. The gentleman was talking about because I had asked a question about an environmental impact / assessment and acoustic study done to identify the threatened and endangered species within the tract. So have you guys done that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your question.
How the environmental impact / assessment and the acoustic studies, have they been done? Because you did briefly touch about that, so are you in the process of doing that?
So the environmental impact study is actually a more preliminary study than what we've conducted at this point.
Okay.
And then the acoustic studies, we're in the process of getting approval. We're coordinating with Fish and Wildlife right now. The way their protocol for studies works is that we compile a plan, present it to them. They review the plan, give us recommendations. We adjust, and communicate back and forth and come up with an appropriate study.
Okay.
You're basically designing a scientific study, and so it takes some back and forth to get to that point. But we're in the process of getting that approved. And then once it's approved, there's a survey period for them. They've granted, because we're under the gun as far as timelines regarding when it's appropriate to study, to look for bats.
It's usually in the summer, isn't it?
Yes, generally. Because of how temperate our weather is and because of the mediation from the ocean, the bats here don't hibernate. We don't really have any caves or any substantial hibernacula, any thermal refugia for them. So they really just crawl underneath the bark of like a shaggy bark pine tree. And they only stay that way when temperatures are cold. So like these past few days that we've experienced colder temperatures, the bats aren't flying around at night. Once nighttime temperatures get up above 40 degrees for a day or two, then they're back active. It's like birds, the way they go to sleep at night.
Okay.
But they're, so
Okay.
we're gonna get a plan approved that'll allow us to survey outside of the survey period, given certain environmental conditions are met.
Okay, so going back to your PCN again, and item G talks about, it says that the NFIP prohibits any development with a designated floodway, including placement of fill without a no impact certification from FEMA or the local NFIP representative. So if you're gonna put fill dirt in that road that's going to cross the wetlands, I mean, shouldn't you get that certification before you fill all of that stuff in over the wetlands? The road A?
So my expertise is obtaining authorization under the Clean Water Act to fill those wetlands. All of the other certifications come later in the process and outside of the Clean Water Act. So Kevin can answer that better than I can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's what we talked about.
Right.
That's design, the next step would be a detailed design of the roadway and permitting. And the engineer will coordinate with the certified floodplain manager with the city and FEMA to get that certification and that permit that you're talking about.
Okay, so my last question is, now there are like 8 conditions in this PCN for you guys. And the end date, the verification is valid, it says here, and I know you guys talked about this a few minutes ago about some of this, but I didn't get the entire response. It says that the verification is valid until March 14, 2026. So there are 8 conditions plus 2 in here, and that y'all have to meet before the deadline. What happens if you don't meet that deadline?
Just said he extended it a year. once
You
you
can
start.
extend it. Right, there's still 8, I mean, they're very big conditions.
Those 8 conditions, if we don't meet those, our permit's invalid.
Okay.
There is no option to not meet them. By accepting the authorization that the Corps has provided, we agree to those conditions and we meet those conditions. If we don't have a permit from the Corps of Engineers and we're violating the law.
Oh, okay, that's what I needed to hear. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
I have one last question. The spine road that goes up to 278. The timetable for the exit improvements, putting a light there on 278 is approximately 4 years. Will the Spine Road be complete at that time? And if not, when will it be complete?
I want to stay consistent to what we said before. I believe, Mr. Mayor, what we're committing to do is, and again, each step of the way, if we come in with parcel 11, we'll have the portion of the Spine Road completed to serve that and serve that safely. If we come in with parcel 9A, we'll continue to go through. But the phase one, I'm going to stay consistent with this, is that area across from the hospital that you see in lighter shade, and then the portion off of John Smith down at the bottom. That's all phase one. Kevin, you want to point to where we're taking it to? So right at that intersection. So the middle portion will come online as those parcels are developed. Now, I'm going to reiterate, we've surveyed, platted. We've not dedicated it to the city yet, but it's recorded. And so, anyway, talking to Josh, something ever happened to us, that you'd be able to control your own destiny there. But it's our intent to finish that in stages as we work through the meat of the development.
So conceivably, the Spine Road will be completed years from now.
I think that's a good point. I mean, we ideally, no. Like if none of these retailers on the interior we're finding out are going to want to open until DOT is finished. So we're going to parallel process with that process. And let's just say we land the big fish for parcel 10, which we've stayed true to. They're going to time it out just like the travel center on the other side of the highway to be open at the same time that road work is finished. Or I should say not before that. So we're kind of stuck with that. But all the while, we'll continue to do what we can do to progress. But
Ideally, the wetland permit's in hand, the roadway's designed, it's permitted, we're getting our FEMA approval, et cetera, et cetera. So it's ready to go all the while. I mean, we're not slowing down at all.
it's a similar process to what we worked through, Mr. Mayor, on Prosper Drive. I mean, it's identical, actually.
So if the completion of the Spine Road will be dependent upon the timetable of you progressing with developing parcel 10, 9, 10, 9, and 8, right?
Yeah, that's a fair statement. 11 looks like it's progressing well, so I think we'll over deliver there.
11,
Any other questions?
To your point, I think it's good to get on the record because there's an existing road improvement schedule as part of that 2022 agreement, which I think provides for the latest that the Spine Road could go in, correct?
I don't know.
Part of the original agreement?
I'm gonna look back, and I know Kevin's probably got it printed out, and we'll stand true to that if that's what. But I think the most important portion is we're taking the big steps. We've committed to DOT, we've sold them the right of way, we're ready to dedicate that to the city or however you want to do it. I mean, has that plat been recorded, Kevin?
it has been.
Okay, so you've got a recorded plat indicating where that road is. Ward Edwards has designed all the utility network through that road. So bottom line, there's no turning back at this point. I think, the prudent thing to do is wait to see, if we get that named retailer that we're talking about to finish the interior.
That will ultimately accelerate it, that if you were to
Correct.
get that, it goes online much faster. I guess what I'm trying to nail down is what would be the latest that would come online if it's spoken to in the development agreement, because that's what I'm looking, it says Exhibit E Road Improvement Schedule.
Yeah. I think whatever we committed to early on.
When is it going to be done? And the reason I asked the question is because all along, the Spine Road would take some of the pressure off of those curb cuts off John Smith Road. So until that spine road's done, all those parcels, 13, 17, 9, all those 1,400 homes, right now have only one access onto John Smith Road. And that's at Pine Arbor. And potentially then that other road, but so until that spine road's done, 13, 12, 11, 17, all those parcels must come out onto John Smith Road. Once and this was part of the selling point, when the spine road's done, those people can now, especially if they're going north, they can go through the spine road, come out at the light at 278 and hit the exit from there. So that opening of the spine road, and that's why I asked the question, is important to the total traffic flow of this plan. And that's why I asked what the planned schedule is to have it complete.
What would be the expectation of having the light and the completion where the spine road comes out onto 278? Do we have any?
278 with the light,
Yeah.
that is planned to be done at the time the widening gets up to exit 8. The improvements for the exit 8 to the converging diamond, the widening and Buc-ee's is all planned for about approximately the same time, figure 4 to 5 years.
Okay, so that intersection is about 5 years away.
About 4 to 5 years away.
Okay.
According to DOT's widening schedule.
My understanding, Mr. Mayor, is it's gonna be a year prior. They're gonna try to activate that light prior.
Where the widening
Correct,
gets up there?
yes.
So
I would like to see that spine road completed within a very short time frame of that happening. Because I agree with the mayor that, that access, do whatever we can to John Smith, we're gonna take it from an F to a D. I can live with a D, not completely, but if we can accelerate for those folks to get out of there. As I'm looking at that now, you know, you've got where you're initially coming into, looks like parcel 16B. And, you know, you've got those parcels in between, but you also have that access road from what is Road A that runs back over that way. I mean, I don't care if you know, if you can get those people out of 17, 2 different directions, I'd be happy as can be. Because you know, how many possible rooftops are in those 2, 3 parcels you're looking at there?
the density is 1,400.
But that's those 2 parcels. What?
About 260 to 280.
Which two, Kevin?
These two. I think a max of 300, but everything's trending a little less than that.
The first one's up here.
Yeah, those are the ones we were talking about.
260 here. Yeah.
260.
260, 288.
And remember this, Mr. Mearsman and Mr. Mayor, we're going to have to come back with a TIA for, let's say we come in with parcel 13. If they say it can't function safely without the spine road, then obviously we have. So I think every step of the way, I keep saying you're going to have a checks and balance, but and I think we just stick to the DA, what we agreed to and we were approved on the spine road.
And 11 is key to this. And again, this is going to be coming in 2025 to y'all for an IMP approval. And their access, we have to deliver their main entrance here. That's where their clubhouse is going to be. Constructions from this side. And then you could see that this loop is not, is probably going to be the next step. And then you've got the circulation that you're talking about where you can disperse it a little better. So that's all coming. And I think, you know, by them coming forward, you'll have that vision and that kind of commitment.
Eventually, we have to be able to dump some traffic out onto 278 through the development. I mean, and I agree, we can't wait until everything else is sold and then do it, but we don't know the time frame that's in we don't have that here.
I think it's an exhibit to the development agreement. I just don't know what it is specifically.
All right.
We can see a scenario where you would say, look, we're not going to give you approval for site 15 until you complete this road. So I think
Okay.
every step of the way, you'll have a bite at the apple.
All right. Did we get all settled on the drainage of the property? Is that all taken care of now? The outflow of water and all of that, is that all?
I think from our standpoint, the answer is yes. We're taking the design standards, and our engineers here tonight, I mean, we've gone above and beyond what is standard, okay? Just to address Mrs. Guzman's concern there.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
We submitted a letter, Josh, back in December, the engineer's letter, that'll be for y'all's review next week.
I have no more questions.
Any other questions from council before we open it up to the public? At this point, I would like to invite anyone watching from the public or online to address any questions or comments that they might have.
Okay, a couple of things.
Could you come to the podium, please? State your name and address for the record.
Landon Pape, 39 Epps Avenue, right here in Hardyville. Just had a couple comments. One, I want to go on the record. I do love the idea of this. I know there's some concerns with traffic. Obviously, as one that travels John Smith every single day, I know it needs help. So I'm looking forward to the widening of that. I'm looking forward to the potential of additional retailers come here. Right now, as a downtown resident, most of my tax dollars are being spent in Beaufort County or in Pooler. So I'd much rather the retail be here in Jasper County, in the city of Hardyville, to keep my dollars local. So I definitely would love the addition of retail and local businesses that we can support as a resident. I did have one question, just in kind of my involvement through all this. If this is not approved at the second reading, is the city on the hook for anything since it was originally approved 2 years ago?
Karina, are we on the hook for anything?
I would caution, I think that's a fairly broad question.
Since it since it was approved originally, I guess three calendar years or whatever, is the city penalized for not approving it in a second reading?
Do we have
Any financial responsibility?
This is not approving or disapproving the development agreement or the development, the PDD, if I understand this right, and this is probably a legal question. This is an infrastructure plan.
All solely infrastructure.
It's just approving the roadway plan. So if we don't approve the roadway plan, that doesn't mean we've disapproved what we passed 2.5 years ago. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult to answer that question with any kind of certainty because of how many variables are involved. But I think you've actually accurately stated what part of the process we are in right now.
This is an infrastructure plan. It's not the PDD, it's not the DA agreement. It's just the roadway infrastructure plan.
I appreciate that. And just second, residents that I've talked to, the citizens of Hardyville, we definitely support this project. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I think she has do you have somebody?
Yeah, we have a question online.
Bring it forward, please.
The question is from Tyler Currier. Are there any plans for the John Smith overpass to have sidewalks?
Yeah, the bridge over 95 will have sidewalks on it.
The rec trail, it's going to be significant as well. It's a dedicated multi-purpose path that's going to feed in.
But there's going to be sidewalk over the bridge, but not over the rest of John Smith Road.
So can you talk about one, interconnectivity within the development itself, and then connection to the pathways, if any, outside of the development itself?
Yes. So we're picking up this trail, the recreational trail, along at the western end of the project, and it's going to go down the entire stretch of John Smith Road to 278 in the 50-foot average buffer. So it's gonna meander through there. It's gonna, also, there's an obligation to come up and along one of the sides of the spine road to 278 as well in this point portion. So it'll feed off into the side roads. Obviously, there's an internal sidewalk network as well, contemplated for all the internal roads which are required for the PDD. So there's going to be good pedestrian interconnectivity and flow.
Any other questions from the public? That's it. Any other questions from council?
This will be on the agenda on Thursday.
Be on the agenda next Thursday.
16th.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Do we need a motion to adjourn? You have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Good start.